The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod, and glad to have my cohort back.
Glad to be back, Shannon.
Thrilled that you're here.
I know.
And we got a big show, too.
Yes, we do.
We've got a very special guest that we both adore,
Yeah.
Christina Adams, who is author of the new book, Camel Crazy. But before that, she was author of the book, A Real Boy. And that was really what brought me to CARD.
Right.
That and the fact that I was given the book by a mom who was a CARD mom.
A Real Boy, to me, was one of the best books ever written on autism.
Right.
Yeah.
And it sort of became my autism Bible for like a year.
Right.
And like I had that book with me so many places that it got like waterlogged and had stains all over it. And I went and bought a new one and then, met a mom and I was like, oh, you got to read this book. And so I've always had like a couple of copies of it around because then I give them away and then I never have any copies.
Right. I gave it to a lot of people. I recommended it to all moms when their kids were newly diagnosed.
Yeah. I think it's a great book, and we've always said to her, when are you going to write the sequel to everything that happened after you left CARD, all of those things, and it's finally here. It's finally
Her journey
out.
with the camels is truly amazing.
Which goes completely in a different direction than how anybody ever thinks anything is going to be. But she's a remarkable woman. I remember sitting and reading and seeing that she lived somewhere in Southern California, and I was like, I want to meet this woman. I want to meet her. I want to know her.
I met her at a doctor's office where we both took our sons for early intervention. Dr. Michael Goldberg, she did his protocol for a while.
Well, and it was years later for me, and there was a video that they had of her, and I was like, that's what she looks like. And I remember asking her to be on Autism Live in the very early days. I was like, well, I got to have her on the show. And I was so nervous and excited, and now I consider her a friend.
Yeah, I do too. Absolutely.
And I'm always like a little like, oh, look at me, friends with Christina Adams, because she was such an icon to me.
Yes.
And
she hosts a segment on Autism Live.
We have a running segment with her that Autism and Beyond that we filmed with her.
Right.
That's her. That's Christina, and she's just a fascinating
she sure
lady.
Is. I can't wait to interview her today.
Somebody that I surely respect. And they say that there, when the student is ready, the teacher shows up, and that you have many great teachers in your life, and I count her as one of my great teachers in my life. So, love that she's going to be here with us. And first, we have some news.
We have some in the news stories.
First of all, I love Spectrum News.
They have some great
I respect
articles.
them, and we a lot of times we'll refer to articles and send you over there, and I really think that they do a great job of covering news. No offense to Spectrum News, but there is an article that is running right now with the title. The headline is "Study Finds Thin Evidence for Early Autism Therapies." And I went, what?
Right. How could that be? That early intervention is not effective. That just can't be.
And it's a bad title.
Right.
If you read the article, what it goes on to say is that basically there have been 2 studies that looked at, and they were meta-analysis. So a meta-analysis is when You're not doing study work of your own. You're taking a group of studies, grouping them together, and looking at what, if you group them together, do you get any different information? Now, meta-analysis studies are great because sometimes it says, well, this study, and if you put them together, then you've got an interesting thing. But sometimes it's a reach because you're asking the research to do something that the researchers didn't intend it to do. So you've got to be careful with a meta-analysis. So they took this article is about two different meta-analysis studies. One where they were looking at a wide variety of different therapies, including things like the Denver Early Start model, a bunch of different things, but not just pure ABA.
Right.
So a bunch of different things, but not, and even things that you might use in conjunction with ABA, but not pure ABA. And they looked at those things. And what the meta-analysis found is not that those things aren't effective, but that the research done on them wasn't what they call robust.
Right.
That there wasn't enough data about things in order to draw a clear conclusion. So that's what the thin evidence is. The study wasn't robust enough, not the evidence, the parameters of the study. The other meta-analysis that they were looking at was for PRT, pivotal response therapy, which is something that you can use in conjunction with ABA, but on its own, it's not ABA. It's just like a tool that you can use in a method that you can use within ABA. And same thing, they expected to find that it was wildly effective, but what they found was that the study wasn't robust enough and they didn't look at enough of the right things. So none of the studies were conclusive, and none of them were looking at the single biggest early therapy that is done, the one that insurance pays for, which is ABA. So I'm going to call foul on this title.
Okay. Fair enough.
It didn't find thin evidence for early autism therapies. It found that they're not doing research effectively for things that are in addition to ABA that are considered early therapies.
Right, right.
That's what the...
So ABA is not in this
They didn't look
article.
at ABA.
No, they didn't.
They
And
didn't
then
look at ABA.
a speech-language pathologist that was quoted in the article says, an individualized approach that uses evidence-based methods is probably best.
Right. Right. Well, and most
And
of the
ABA is
evidence
evidence-based.
around ABA,
Right.
Which is why insurance pays for it.
Yes.
So, but even if you're looking at some of those other therapies, like a speech and language pathologist approach, like the Denver Early Start model, which uses elements of ABA, even if you were interested in those things, you couldn't conclusively rule out that they're effective from these studies.
Right.
So there you go. How useful is that to us? However, there's another study out that claims that 1 in 4 children with autism is undiagnosed.
Which is horrifying.
It is horrifying, and worse than that is that it says that there's a particular group of people that are more likely to be undiagnosed. Dun, da, 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 share with us.
Black or Hispanic, most of the kids. And this is from Autism Research. And about 1 in every 4 8-year-olds assessed in the study was found to have undiagnosed autism and wasn't receiving any services.
Yeah. Well, and look, I think this is probably very accurate. 1 in 4. It might even be worse than that.
Right.
Because we see on a daily basis how many people write into us and go, my child is 7 or 8. And, I remember me saying something to the pediatrician at 3, and they said, no. And you and I have been through the experience of taking our child at least once
Right.
to a credible pediatrician and saying, I feel like something is wrong. And they told both of us, no.
No, nothing's wrong.
Nothing's
or
wrong.
misdiagnosed, in Wyatt's case, pervasive developmental disorder, when he clearly was firmly on the autism
But
spectrum.
didn't even that take you a while to get the PDD NOS?
Oh, yeah.
Like the first time around, I know for Jem, and I was like, I'm concerned, he's lost words. And that pediatrician should have been like, well, we need to rule everything out, including strokes, right? But she was like, he's fine,
Right.
you're being overreactive,
Right.
you late in life mothers.
I had
you know?
got the same thing.
So, and we are two very pushy white women
Right.
with a great command of the English language who aren't worried about our green card, who feel very entitled to argue with a doctor. And it took us a while. So
you can
tell
imagine
me,
the average person.
yeah, right. It's horrifying to think about. So there you go. And then our great article that was on The Hill. You guys familiar with thehill.com, which is all about things that are happening in Washington, D.C. And I thought it was interesting because you don't often see much about autism on The Hill.
No, you don't.
And so they had an article this week that said what autism researchers and advocates want for people on the spectrum. And I thought, well, I want to know what The Hill thinks that
Excuse me.
bless you,
There goes a
that
sneeze.
autism advocates want. And I thought it was pretty interesting. So you can go and read it on The Hill.
Yeah, and did you hear that Democratic Joshua Collins would be the first openly autistic member if elected for Congress?
Yes, he's running for Congress. In fact, we've reached out to his office to see if he would like to be on the show. We would love to have him on here. No, I think that would be truly wonderful. But one of the things that I thought was interesting, a good takeaway from this article is at one point they spoke to Wendy Ross. She's a developmental pediatrician and director of the Center for Autism and Neurodiversity at Jefferson Health. CNN said that they labeled her a CNN hero in 2014. And her center has been working, like a lot of places, on something called universal design. And universal design is meant to make spaces and whether it's education or medical facilities, it's supposed to be so that anyone can walk in the door and be able to access, whether you're a person on the spectrum, whether you're blind, whether you're deaf, whether you have a physical disability, because we all get a little ableist,
Right.
don't we?
Yes.
And so that's one of the things that they've been doing. And in particular, I love that they're trying to train their people. She says, what we are aiming to do in the hospital is create a universal design that would benefit not only people with ASD, but everyone, including people with mental health issues. They're also working to train all types of medical staff on recognizing ASD and familiarizing them with the symptoms. And that's not so that they can diagnose people. It's so that when they're treating someone comes in the door and says, you know, I need help, or is signing or whatever, for them to be able to recognize, okay, this might be a person who, and be looking for that.
Right, right.
I know I still don't necessarily look for that, right? I always tell the story of being at Disneyland when Jem was little, and, you know, we were well into therapy, and, you know, and I well knew what autism was. And there was a little boy who went darting past us in one of the shops out in the Disney walk outside. And I'm always on the alert. My mother raised me, if there's a kid on their own, to identify and go, lost child, you know, call over people to help, stay with the child. And I did. I said to my husband, get somebody, I'm going to stay and take Jem with you, and I'm going to stay with this kid. And I followed him everywhere. And he hid underneath a clothes rack. And I went up to him and I said, hey, honey, are you lost? Are you here with somebody? And he said nothing and hid his face. And then at a certain point, I asked him another question, and he started signing, and I was like, oh, he's deaf, right?
Right.
But he wasn't making eye contact, and the worker came over, and I said, you know, do you have anybody who can sign? I only know a couple of signs, but apparently he's deaf, right? And I'm telling everybody he's deaf, right? Like all these things. Well, here comes Mom, and she's like, he's not deaf, he's nonverbal,
autism.
and he has autism, and she looked at me like, you know nothing. And of course, I wasn't going to sit there and go, well, here, meet my child.
Right.
But because I felt like an idiot.
Right.
It never occurred to me.
Right.
Never even occurred to me. And I thought, boy, if it's not occurring to me, who else is it occurring to?
Right.
So I love this. The article goes on to talk about some of the ways that they've tried to make public spaces more accessible. So it's a good read. Check it out. The
Yeah,
Hill.
she also says we don't have a medical system that's prepared to serve everyone with autism that is now being diagnosed.
Well, anybody
and not
who has
diagnosed.
a kiddo on the spectrum of any age who's been to an emergency room, we're all well aware of that, right?
Right.
I mean, that is just the truth.
Yeah.
So good on her for recognizing it and trying to do something about it. So that is in The Hill.
Okay.
But we've got a wonderful guest, Christina
So
Adams.
we're going to take a break and come back
Yes.
to Christina Adams.
That's right. So
Okay.
stick with us.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray,
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
and you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Parent to parent, having a compliant child is one of the greatest things on earth. But frequently we ask ourselves, why doesn't my child listen? Well, here are some tips to help us to get a listening, happy, compliant child. First, we want to make sure that we make compliance worthwhile. Whenever your child does something that's compliant, make sure that you praise them and heap rewards on them that are meaningful to them, things they really want. One of the things that we have to be mindful of is that if the child isn't compliant, we have to praise more often. Just heap it on. If you say to yourself, there's nothing to praise, they're not doing anything that I want them to do, then ask them to do something that they already want to do. This is a really tricky way of being able to praise them. And then, of course, the last thing that we want to do is catch them doing good things when they least suspect it. And make sure you heap that praise on, because having a compliant child is one of the best things in life. Token economies are a great way to get to good behavior with your child.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live and What's Left. I'm here with my good friend Amy. I'm so glad you could come back.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Amy, where are you from?
New Jersey.
Jersey?
Jersey.
Jersey. Great. Well, I love having you here. She's with Amy, one of our partners here on Autism Live, and we're going to cook up something really yummy today. What's on the menu?
So we're going to do pudding.
Wonderful.
You know, something that kids all like, but we're really focusing on trying to increase the healthy fats that our kids are getting. Avocados are a great source of healthy fats, but a lot of our kids are very adverse to green foods.
Right.
So pudding, especially a chocolate pudding, is a fabulous way to get the healthy fats in our kids without them knowing it.
Yes, and that's so yummy.
When we think about, most puddings are usually made with dairy,
right,
which we're trying to be milk-free. It's the fat in the milk that gives us that creaminess. So in this case, we're going to use the avocado to do the same thing.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what do we got on deck first?
So we're going to start with some sprouted almonds.
Great.
And let's do a little bit of coconut oil.
Wonderful.
Coconut butter.
And it's warmed up, I see, or I feel.
So basically what we're trying to do here is make like an almond butter.
Okay, so I can go ahead and start that up? Wonderful. I think we're good.
Okay.
So do we need it more creamy than that?
I think it's supposed to be.
Yeah, so let me do a little more. So that is definitely creamier.
Yes. So now we're going to add some honey.
Wonderful. How much of honey do you put
A
into
fourth a cup. And this is where, again, depending on how sweet of a palate your child has, you can either do a little bit less or a little bit more. The nice thing is that honey is a very natural sweetener.
Correct.
So it's very good for our kids to have.
It is easier to digest than certain sugars.
Exactly.
Out there.
It's pure. It's more nature-based. And the other nice thing is that it's very antibacterial.
Right.
So it's got a lot of healing properties
Wonderful.
that other sugars would not have.
What do we got next?
So this is just filtered water.
Wonderful.
We are going to add in three-fourths of a cup of cocoa powder.
Okay, 3/4 of a cup. Look at me guess.
Yes, you're.
I think everyone who's watched me before knows I hate to measure. Isn't that terrible? And this is also a dairy-free pure cocoa powder, which is really important to stay away from.
And again, trying to buy like fair trade cocoa.
Right. It is.
Organic is really the healthiest.
A little bit of
A
salt.
little bit of salt.
Okay.
We're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, hello, vanilla.
So now we're going to add in 2 avocados.
Great, and we got some extra ripe ones. And is it better to go extra ripe with this?
It definitely is going to be softer, so it's going to make it easier to scoop it out.
Right. Oh, this is so yummy. You would never think avocado and chocolate.
Right.
How does that
it's amazing.
translate?
It's amazing.
Awesome. Good to know, because I would never for a million years, I would say Mexican food or pretty much anything but breakfast food, but not chocolate.
And I think also, like, if kids get introduced with avocados this way, that when you then try to transition them into something that actually is more apparent that there's an avocado.
Right.
The taste buds will already now recognize the flavor.
I call that its natural habitat.
Exactly.
Got it. Are we ready to go?
We're ready.
Awesome.
We're basically going to blend it until it's very well mixed.
So, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. So how would you serve this?
So basically just serve it like you would pudding.
Okay, great.
In this case, it probably needs to be chilled a little bit.
Okay. I'll wait to put it in my mouth. That is so funny. Oh, this looks and smells like chocolate, really good pudding.
Exactly.
Not the healthy thing that we're trying to fool our kids with. Oh, Amy, what a great idea. And the good fats, like you said, good for the brain, good for digestion. I love it. So how long would I refrigerate this?
I don't think it needs a long time.
Okay.
I think it's more that we've used coconut butter.
Right.
And so it's going to melt at a temperature that's room temperature. So
Neurodiversity in parents. One big happy family? We hope so. Anyway, what is neurodiversity? Everybody's talking a lot about it these days. Neurodiversity means that there's a view that people with autism just have a different autism as a disability or a disorder, and that can create some conflict. We should be honored for that. And then parents we sometimes throw up our hands, neurodiversity or neurodiversity. There can actually be some issues around this that we need to think about together. First of all, neurodiversity could be positive because it can create more of a kind of a sense of acceptance in society. Yes, these people have autism, they're just different. It could possibly help create a sense of self-esteem that's improved in people with autism. They just realize, okay, I'm not damaged, I'm not bad, whatever, I'm just different. So that could be useful. On the downside, it could be an excuse to not give services to people with autism, to not have much empathy for their parents, and to not look at ways that they can be helped. And in many people that have autism, they do very well. Other people do not do well at all. They can't access services. They cannot enjoy their life. They're in pain. So it is important that we understand it's not just one issue. So how do we solve this when we look at neurodiversity? I think we have to look at it this way. It's kind of like when you have that big family dinner at Thanksgiving and everybody's around the table. You got your uncle, your aunt, your kids, your parents, everyone has an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mesh. And I think the way that we need to think about this is we need to respect each other's opinion, because actually we need each other. We need to be allies on this. The outside world is a big place for people with autism spectrum disorders and their families. We have to remember we're one big, happy, dysfunctional family, and we need to behave that way. We should respect each other, listen to each other, and we will all have a great time when it comes time to get together and celebrate the lives of people with autism.
And we're back, and as promised, and you just saw her actually.
Yes, the
on
fabulous.
Autism and Beyond. We're back with Christina Adams. Hi, Christina.
Hey, Nancy and Shannon.
We're so thrilled to have you back. We were saying before that you have been a guiding light for so many of us, that you are an incredible, we consider you a friend, and you're an incredible woman, an incredible advocate in the autism community. We loved your first book, A Real Boy. We love your current book, Camel Crazy. And so we're thrilled to have you back on the show with us to talk about this new book. This book is tearing it up, and it should be. You received so many accolades with it. I understand, is it what Harvard said that it's a must read? Tell us, because I can't remember, but it's like so many people have been raving about this book.
Well, that's very nice. I wouldn't, the Harvard Co-op bookstore has it, which I find wonderful that it's on their shelves. I'd like to contrast that with Slab City, an eccentric artist type of place out in the California desert. They also have it in their library in a trailer in the desert. So we're very accessible with Camel Crazy.
And who was it? Was it Barnes and Noble that has it in their must-read fiction section?
Must-read nonfiction.
Nonfiction,
yes,
of course, nonfiction.
I'm very glad to see it on that table. You know, every author wants to be on that table up front when you walk into the door, and I was just lucky that it was there. So, yeah, the camels are just stampeding. It's been on the Public Library of Science blog, the DNA genetics blog. It was featured on that, and that was really great to see. It's also just been selected as a Southern California Science Writers Book Club selection, and I'll do their podcast as well.
Great.
Amazing. Let's
talk a little bit about your journey. First, let's talk about A Real Boy and what that book was about.
Well, A Real Boy was, it's actually the first book, if you want to call this a set. Camel Crazy is a sequel to A Real Boy. Both of them are standalone books, but if you read them, first A Real Boy and then Camel Crazy, you get the whole picture. So as we all were before we came into the autism world, we're just minding our own business, doing our thing in life, and then you get put into the autism world if you want to help your child. And so that I had been a professional writer in my life, and so I just turned all those skills into kind of living the autism story, processing the autism story as far as being a parent of a small person with autism, and realizing what was going on in that world, which was both great and not so great. So I wanted to tell that story because at that time when A Real Boy came out, there was no book that told the whole story. There were really good influential books that told, more about the diet piece or more about the behavioral piece, but I didn't find it was one that told that whole, emotional and interventional story. So I wrote that book, A Real Boy, A True Story of Autism, Early Intervention and Recovery. So after that book came out, which it did, we got a lot of good coverage in the Washington Post and did several printings, and people are still buying it, so that's wonderful. But then I was just minding my own business, back to doing that, because we like to do, keep our personalities and interests alive despite, dealing with autism all the time as parents. So I was at a children's book festival and met a guy with a camel, and that's what led to the new one, Camel Crazy, A Quest for Miracles in the Mysterious World of Camels.
So
I was just going to say, one of the things that I love about you as a writer is that you're a brilliant writer, and let's face it, there are lots of books about moms' journeys with autism, right? But, and it's like chapter one, and then we go through, this thing, and we get this, and they're good books. I don't mean to disparage. But with your book, it's like a car pulls up, and somebody opens the door and says, come on, I'm going to take you on a journey. And you get to go on. I said, I read your book and I was like, I want to know this woman because I feel like I already do. And you take us on a journey where I don't feel like I'm reading something that's educating me, but it is. It's like you just have a way of taking us with you that is so beautiful. You are a wordsmith. You just dive into the book and you feel like you're on this ride together with somebody and that you're going to end up in a place where you didn't expect to be, but that you're richer for it. And certainly that was true in A Real Boy, and certainly that is true in Camel Crazy. But then all the information that you give us on top of that journey, it just adds to the depth of how you write. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great summation. I really appreciate that because it is what I like to try to do. And, as a memoirist, when you write memoir, you are sharing your own story to illuminate what that is like for other people, either who are living similar stories or who have never going to live a story like yours, but they're nonetheless, want to find out what it's like. But then because these things are so, that we're doing, that I'm facing with, autism and that our community is, there's so much information. And in my past career, I did deal with information and translating that to audiences that didn't have time to read a big, thick thing on, an aircraft or a weapon system or whatever, a policy that I used to do when I worked at the Pentagon. But, you can distill that into little nuggets. So I guess I got that skill, and I just want to, I like to dig into information and shake it and see what the big picture is for that information. We don't need to know tiny, tiny details of everything. We need to process that and figure out what that means. So I'm doing that, for you, hopefully.
Well, it's amazing.
Yes, it is. It's very moving, and you feel like you're there alongside you in your journey. So you told us you met your first camel. What happened after that?
Well, I looked at that camel and I said, hey, well, I'm really, really bored, and my son is reading books. He's fine. He's age 7 at that time. And so I was about also to become a single mom, and that was a very precarious, scary time because, that's what you're afraid of as a mom, being alone with your child and not having the help that you need for both of you to sometimes actually just survive. So I just saw that.
Oh, we have a little Skype. There we go.
Took a look at it, and I saw a guy that had soap and lotion that he was selling from camel milk, and I said, well, what else did they do with that milk? And I probably should have never asked that, but that's what I get for being nosy. Curiosity killed the camel, as they say. So he said that it was given to premature infants in hospitals in the Middle East, and it was thought to be non-allergenic and might be close to human breast milk. And boom, that was when I had my light bulb moment, and I thought this milk might help my son's autism symptoms, and B, might also be a great dairy substitute for people like him that can't have other milks. For him, dairy from a cow, and though it didn't work either, would make him hand flap and toe walk, and he literally said it feels like there's dirt in my brain once he got good enough at speaking to say that. And so all the other milks too, those vegan milks, would all set off allergies. And so we were down to potato milk. And so I was still always wanting an animal milk because that helps build bone strength better, which now is actually borne out by a study. So boom, I have to stick my nose into that world, and I just became obsessed, and it's been a 14-year rabbit hole journey, and that has led me from America to other countries, and I've met the most amazing people in this journey, and I'm just so lucky that they wanted me to, share their culture and their value, love their healing traditions with the world. And so, yeah, let's go on a journey because, we have a lot on our plates as parents, but we still want to learn and we have value to the world ourselves. I think sometimes we forget that. I mean, I used to think I didn't matter at all. Everything was about my son and getting him better and getting him progress and getting him where he could be. And if he wasn't going to make progress, that's how it is. You just have to make them happy and successful as they can be. So I didn't matter for years. So I felt like finally, I want to at least have a life a little bit of my own. And so that really helped, when you're trying to help others, and if you can find something in that for yourself too, and to still create a community that you can be part of and other people can be part of. That's what I feel like I've done with these 2 books, and I'm really appreciative that I've been welcomed by a lot of people.
It makes me emotional because to hear you say that you didn't feel like you mattered, and yet your book changed my life. And like forever, it changed my life. The first one and the second one as well. I just think it's a lesson for all of us about, that you are somebody who follows your passions and follows your instincts. And I learn from that all the time, quite frankly, Christina, that, because I don't think there are very many moms who would have been at the bookstore and been like, been at the book fair and been like, oh, there's a camel, so I guess I'm going to dive. Like, we might have Googled it.
Right.
But the rest of us would not end up, in a tent with
Bedouins, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey, I did Google it. There was zero. So, leave it to me to have to create my own, support my own scientific theory. So whatever, it just happens, but
You're an
if you find
adventurous
something-
soul, though.
Well,
Yeah. Tell us what actually happened once you discovered the camel milk with your son and with others on the spectrum. What effect did the camel milk have?
well, it had, for my son, he was sort of, I like to say he's almost like patient zero in some ways. Now, I did have that idea. I went home, there was nothing on the internet about autism or anything, just weird articles about making cheese and how hard it was and stuff. And so I didn't give up, though. So I kept researching, and then a few months later, I found that there was an article by Dr. Ruben Yagil and another doctor, medical science professional, and they had given camel milk to some kids with autism in Israel, and they got better. So it was kind of a short-term article, but that just showed me I was on the right path. So that's when I had to kind of smuggle it in with, medical support from Bedouins in the Israel-Palestine area of the Middle East. And I gave it to my son, and he got incredibly better overnight, like shocking, on 4 ounces of camel milk. So after that, it just threw me, into this whole investigation mode, which I went into before I gave it to him. So I'd done my due diligence as far as science went, kind of made the theory on why it might help. It worked beyond my wildest dreams. So after that, I just became a camel milk investigator. But in 2012, I wrote an article called Got Camel Milk, and it went viral, and it just really helped kick off the whole movement and industry around the world. So in 2013, I wrote a science article, which I've talked about before on Autism Live. That's now been cited maybe about 13 times. So that kind of got a lot of citations, as we know now. And now thousands and thousands and thousands of kids and adults with various medical conditions are using camel milk. And so it's amazing. It's global around the world. In America, the thing where my son is kind of patient zero, I did get milk in America when they started milking camels around 2011. And I gave it to him, and he showed the same response as he did from the Middle Eastern camel milk. So that showed, like, he was probably the first person to do that with autism. It showed that it wasn't just like the milk from this one country or the breed of camel from this one country. It was the camel itself in 2 different environments had the same effect. So that was what was the confirming thing that I needed to do to kind of go public and help drive this forward.
But just for the viewers at home, you do, they really need to read the book, because you do talk a little bit in the book about how there's a certain amount that's the right amount, and too much is not a good thing. This is not a, drown in camel milk sort of thing, correct?
Well, I would say you should bathe in it like Cleopatra if you get the chance, because it's excellent for skin. But as far as drowning in it, no. So no, I do answer all the questions because I know what people want, because I hear from hundreds and hundreds of people all the time. So I wrote the story, and there's incredible people in it, incredible photos in it. So I'd love people to enjoy that. But in the back is a user's guide, and so it's got where do I get it? A complete global source list of where to order. It has all the health conditions that it helps for. I mean, there are more, but I included the basics, which is autism, diabetes type 1 and 2, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, between rounds of chemotherapy, food allergies, gut disorders. There's all kinds of things that it works for. So I do have a chart in the back on how much suggested serving amounts are for each disorder. And then also ways to use it. How do I thaw it out? Like, just for fun here, I'm thawing out my camel milk right now. So you can just take a frozen bottle and set it in cool water. to kind of chill. And then one of the readers in another country said, hey, I read your book and then I saw the actual camel milk you described. So I was glad that my description of this camel milk actually rang true when she saw it in the store. So you can get it all kinds of places now. You can get it on the internet, you can get it everywhere. But I have lists in the back, so it's easy. Like, I've got everything in Camel Crazy that you pretty much want to know about this topic.
Okay, how does it taste, Christina?
That's the number one question, and the number one answer is, after people drink it, is, oh, it just tastes like milk.
It's a little creamier, though, I think, isn't it? Or is that just me?
Well, it's all kind of different. So I, just showed you the raw, fresh milk, from the camel. You can get it, and that is like, to me, when you get just like a nice clean batch that's so perfect, and it's just like that, it just tastes like any milk, basically. Only I feel that it's a little more similar to cow than goat in taste. But then if you get powder, or other kinds, it tastes a little bit different. If you get from different farms, it can taste different. I say it's kind of like a fine cheese. You know how they differ from each other? They're all cheese, but some taste a little bit different.
Amazing. So where all can we get the book?
Well, the book is available anywhere you can get books. So, of course, Barnes & Noble, any other bookstore, independent bookstores, which I love. Independent bookstores have been great at featuring it. And go to any store, either they will have it or they can order it for you. Also, Amazon.com in any country where it operates can get it to you. Let's see, if you want a signed copy, write to me and I can send you a book plate or a signed copy. And then, of course, for our international buyers, it's bookdepository.com. But if you go on my website, ChristinaAdamsAuthor.com, all the places, you just have to push a button, it'll tell you where your independent bookstore is, or your Amazon, or whatever you want to do. So
wonderful. We highly recommend it.
Highly recommend it. And also your first book, A Real Boy. Read them.
Absolutely.
If you haven't read that, you can read the two of these books. They go together and document Christina's journey.
Amazing, amazing.
Thank
So we
you.
want to take a little bit of a break, but then if you still have time, we'd like to come back. There was a story that you brought to our attention yesterday that we'd like to have you talk to our viewers about. Do you
Absolutely.
have time?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we'll
We're
be
going to
back
take a
then.
break and we'll be right back.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. 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 Let's get wild.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome to the show. So the goal of today, we're going to make meatballs. Let's get started. So again, I'm going to take roughly a pound of my ground organic turkey, and I'm going to add in the secret vegetable. So if your kid doesn't like vegetables, don't cook in front of them, okay? Have them watch a movie or something. But you definitely want to make sure they're not watching, because then they won't eat it. So, and here we go with the egg. And our breadcrumbs. I'm just adding salt and pepper to taste. If you think about kids' shapes and sizes, you want to think small shapes, small hands. So your oven should be preheating at about 400 degrees. We're going to kick into the oven here and look at our meatballs. I did flip them halfway through the 20-odd minute. So we'll put, just like Julia Child's, there's our finished product right there. These are good. Cooking is easy. You don't have to be afraid of it. But we want to hear from you. If you can let us know what recipes are important to you, maybe convert a recipe from a traditional flour or gluten-based to a gluten-free or an allergy-free, we're here to help. So you get to us. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. You can reach out on Facebook at facebook.com/autismlive, or reach out at Talk Now. So I know you're having a great day. I had a lot of fun cooking with you in the kitchen, but I'll tell you, before we end, I gotta have more meatballs. Have a great day.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself sometimes, why does my child have meltdowns? Well, the difference between tantrums and meltdowns, tantrums, they're a part of typical development, but meltdowns are when things get a little bit more out of control, when even the child isn't sure what's entirely wrong. Generally with a meltdown, there's an environmental component. There's something else going on outside the child that's making the tantrum worse. It's really important that we start to be detectives and take notes and look around at the environment and start to figure out what are the things that happen every time your child has a meltdown. And lastly, it's important to get help. You really can't face these kinds of things effectively completely on your own. Tantrums, they're a part of typical development, but don't accept meltdowns as something that just happens. Make sure you get help and support. You might be asking yourself if your child has autism.
Neurodiversity in parents. One big happy family? We hope so. Anyway, what is neurodiversity? Everybody's talking a lot about it these days. Neurodiversity means that there's a view that people with autism just have a different way of being, and they should be honored for that. And then parents oftentimes look at autism as a disability or a disorder, and that can create some conflict. We sometimes throw up our hands, neurodiversity or neurodiversity. There can actually be some issues around this that we need to think about together. First of all, neurodiversity could be positive because it can create more of kind of a sense of acceptance in society. Yes, these people have autism, they're just different. It could possibly help create a sense of self-esteem that's improved in people with autism. They just realize, okay, I'm not damaged, I'm not bad, whatever, I'm just different. So that could be useful. On the downside, it could be an excuse to not give services to people with autism, to not have much empathy for their parents, and to not look at ways that they can be helped. And in many people that have autism, they do very well. Other people do not do well at all. They can't access services. They cannot enjoy their life. They're in pain. So it is important that we understand it's not just one issue. So how do we solve this when we look at neurodiversity? I think we have to look at it this way. It's kind of like when you have that big family dinner at Thanksgiving and everybody's around the table. You got your uncle, your aunt, your kids, your parents. Everyone has an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mesh. And I think the way that we need to think about this is we need to respect each other's opinion, because actually we need each other. We need to be allies on this. The outside world is a big place for people with autism spectrum disorders and their families. We have to remember, we're one big, happy, dysfunctional family, and we need to behave that way. We should respect each other, listen to each other, and we will all have a great time when it comes time to get together and celebrate the lives of people with autism.
And we're back with Christina Adams, author of A Real Boy and Camel Crazy, and we've been hearing about her journey in the world of autism, and now she has another story that she wants to talk to us about. Thanks for coming back, Christina.
Over the years, Christina has shared with us sometimes, I mean, you're a wonderful advocate for the autism community, and there are different things that come up that you're a leader and you say, look, this is wrong, and maybe we want to do something about it, and a lot of people listen to you. So you talked to me yesterday about a story. Tell the folks at home about this story.
I just saw this little news item yesterday, and it looks like it took place in Metairie, Louisiana. Not that I'm saying that correctly, but this 16-year-old boy, he was severely autistic. He likes to visit this place where they do games and things like that. And he and his father were regular visitors there. They felt welcome there. And so you know how that is when you find a place where that kind of child is welcomed and everybody understands him and cares for him. I mean, that's a rare thing, and that's wonderful. But the child was pretty severely affected by autism. He's a big child too, 16, very large from the video they showed on the news. And so he was having, I guess, a temper tantrum, an outburst. And he was slapping his father. They were out in the parking lot. And he was slapping his father on the head based on what the clip showed that was taken by a bystander. And so the father, was trying to protect himself, but the boy was slapping him really hard on the head. But police were called. And anyway, the policeman ended up taking him down to the ground, the boy. And then you can kind of see where they get on top of him. He's face down, and he's a very full-chested guy. The child is, and then the policeman looks pretty large too, and he had vests on and stuff. So they're on top of him. The kid's face is down on the ground, and it looks like they also do something really hard to the back of the kid's head. I can't see what they did actually, but it looked very hard. And then there was another officer there. So anyway, the child was then taken away, and he's dead.
Yeah.
He's dead.
It's,
Yeah.
Right now, then they even said yesterday that the police wouldn't make a statement to the local media until the autopsy report came back. But that child is dead. And so now we have a situation where, it's just a big ball. So it's very hard to get funding for an aide to come with a family, to be with a child like that all the time.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen all the time unless you really make it happen. I do know young adult men in California or teenagers where they do have to have like 2 male aides with them all the time. So it does happen, but it's impossibly difficult to do that in most places. I don't know if this family ever even asked for it. But second of all, you don't have that because of the funding situation or what have you. And then, you get the police come. Not only do they take this child's life, probably, look, they say maybe there's an underlying medical condition, but a lot of our people with autism have underlying medical conditions. Getting them down on the ground, doing whatever that was, and sitting on them like that, it seems like there could be a better way. We know that there are de-escalation techniques that you can use with people with autism and mental illness. It's just that they aren't deployed very often. So I don't believe that had to happen. And now we're probably going to have a lawsuit, probably going to have, a big settlement for the loss of this child's life. And all that money could have been used in a positive way. We just traditionally don't do things proactively in this country, or probably a lot of countries, it's limited what they'll do proactively. But I just feel it's like a terrible thing. Like also out here near me in California, I think he had autism, developmentally disabled young man with his parents in a Costco. And there's dispute about what happened, but a police officer shot him. And it wasn't even a police officer that was on duty at that location. And he's dead. So, and the parents were yelling, don't. What do we have to do to save our young people with autism from this kind of force? And I respect the police force tremendously. This is not a negative on them. I'm sure they feel very stressed by being in this situation. So I'd love to see more support for them, but also it's got to be on the developmental disability support side. When parents say they need help, they need to be given help. That way everybody could be safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see a lot of these cases, unfortunately, and it just points out the need for police officers to be trained, to have sensitivity training to this, because they oftentimes don't know the signs and react not in the correct way in dealing with somebody with autism.
Yeah, a lot of them are terrific too. They really want to. I was at a police event in Huntington Beach a couple years ago, and they had some training recently. They were at an autism awareness event, and they were just terrific. So it can be done. And there's also a specialist, his name is Dennis DeBott, and he does go around and train police departments, and he is the father of a son with autism. So there is precedent. It can happen.
We've had him on the show.
And we've had Emily Island on the show.
Emily has a program with her son, Tom Island. They have a program. There are programs. The issue that I hear from Emily is that a lot of times, first of all, there's you first have to get the police department to see that it's something that would be worthwhile and would, that the time and the energy will save them money, right? Because that's always a hard thing to take people off the jobs that they're doing and say, we're putting you in a classroom for the day that it's worthwhile, but that seems to be doable, that they can get them to do that. But there's a high rate of turnover in police departments. They transfer, they move, they leave the job, whatever. And so getting police departments to do it on a regular basis is like the new hard thing. So I think that what solves that is community pressure. I think that, having a relationship with your police department is important. When Jem was growing up, we lived in the same community as Emily Island, so all of the work had been done for me. So please know that I'm speaking from a position of having lucked out. But Emily had worked with her local police department and had events and things like that. But I remember a time when they wanted me to teach my son at CARD. They wanted him to learn the lessons of different like what are first responders. And they suggested that I call my local police department and fire department and ask, can we come over for a tour? And they were thrilled to. Do I think part of that is because Emily Island had done legwork first? Yes. But I think that if she could do it, we could all do it, right? And starting that relationship with your police department so that then they know you and you can make recommendations and say, when are you having an event? But start with your kid. I think it's helpful, and honestly, it's heartbreaking to me because while I do feel that there are some people on the police force who should not be on the police force, I think we can all agree on that. I think that a lot of people, their intentions are good.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I mean, if I thought that the intentions of those police officers walking up to that young man hitting his dad, if their intention was to kill him, I'd have to go to bed forever. I couldn't get up, right?
I'm sure it wasn't their intention.
I don't think it was their intention. But what they don't know is that you and I, if we were forced to the ground, it would be hard for us to breathe, but we would know behavior to do to make it so that we could breathe. And what we see is that people with Down syndrome and autism often are barrel-chested. You put them face down and they don't know how to help themselves, and they asphyxiate without being hit. And there was the case of the young man outside the movie theater with Down syndrome that this happened to as well. And I think that somebody at the very least has to educate the police about some people don't know the behavior of turning your head to the side.
Yeah, because unfortunately these are not isolated incidences. They seem to crop up every so often.
And that's right. And this will probably haunt those police officers.
Yeah, I think, as you said, the police officers are well-intentioned. They just don't have the training and they don't understand.
Well,
it's traumatic for them too. And I will note, of course, people of color have been dealing with this for a long time. And when you take a person of color who also has a developmental disability, I mean, the risk rate is, risk goes up even more. So there are a lot of issues that we would all love to see addressed. And I'm sure that the police forces would like to see this addressed too.
Yeah. But I think it's driven by parents. And
everything is, right?
Right.
Yes. Everything.
And I love that you said, let's speak out about this today, because I think it's important that we do. And both of you have series on Autism Live that are about empowering parents. And I know that that's something that both of you feel very strongly about, as do I. And so we want to empower those of you who are watching. Don't sit by and wait. Do something to help start with your child, to help your child to know how to behave. You can do Be Safe the movie, which is Emily Island's thing, and start with just your child, which teaches them how to behave when they're around the police. Talk to your police department. We need to make more happen.
Well, when my son was young, and he always nice kid and everything like that, but sometimes I just was always worried, like, what if he did something impulsive or he got caught with a couple friends doing something. So I always told him, A, immediately do what the police officer says right away, but B, tell them that you want an attorney and to call your mom.
There you go. That's funny. I always told Jem to say, my mom has an attorney.
Okay, good. Good thought. Okay.
But that wasn't for police. That was like at school.
Right.
My mom has a lawyer, is what I told him to say. My mom has a lawyer. And he that was one of the first phrases we drilled.
Really?
My mom has a lawyer.
That's a good one.
Well, there was stuff.
That's what happened.
Yeah. Not what you want to raise your child to say, right? But yeah. Love that. Well, Christina, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I know you've been on like the media tour of all time, shaking it up, and it's definitely, I'm glad that you are, because people need to know about this book, Camel
So go
Crazy.
out and get Camel Crazy.
Yes.
You'll go crazy for it.
You will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you,
All right,
Christina.
you take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And we're just about out of time.
Yes.
But thrilled that my friend is back here. And
It's good to be back here with you.
We're going to be back next week. I'm supposed to read what's happening next week, but I have no idea what I did with it. I've given it away to the wolves. What did I do? I just always, it's like every week, every show, this happens to me. Okay, on Monday, all right, you ready for this? We have special education attorney Bonnie Yates is with us, and Paul Worthington from Linda Mood Bell Learning Processes.
Wyatt went through that.
And he's the head of research and development, and they've been doing some really interesting things, especially for those of you who are interested in knowing about if your child has a language processing disorder. They've been doing a lot with that, and with reading comprehension, which a lot of us are concerned about. So that will be on Monday. On Tuesday, we have a best of. On Wednesday, we have Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet with us in the studio. And I know I've said that to you before, but I'm told that hard and fast we have her next Wednesday, and I'm really excited about that. We're going to keep you posted about who we have on Thursday because I don't have it here. And on next week on Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we have one of our guests is going to be Leah Hirschfeld is going to be with us again. She fills us in on research, and she's got some really interesting research to help us to understand. So, and then we will have another guest. I just don't know who it is yet. So all of that and more coming up next week. Have a great weekend. Until we see you next week, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.